Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a work of art that was so shocking, so deeply rooted in a real-life horror story that for a whole century, nobody even dared to put it on a public stage.
So our story doesn't actually start with a poem. It starts with a real document. This manuscript you're seeing was found in the Cenci Palace in Rome, and it tells the story of the complete and utter destruction of one of the city's richest families. And get this isn't fiction. It's a real historical record from 1599. At the center of this whole thing is a guy named Count Francesco Cenci. Now, he was incredibly rich, super powerful, and just completely depraved. The manuscript is brutally honest. It says he spent his entire life in debauchery and wickedness. But the most chilling part? It says he had this deep, unrelenting hatred for his own children. We're not talking about simple neglect here. This was an active, vicious campaign of cruelty. And that cruelty, it was laser-focused on his daughter, Beatrice. The abuse, which the historical account calls an incestuous passion aggravated by every circumstance of cruelty and violence, it just became so unbearable that she, along with her stepmother and brother, finally conspired to have him murdered. So, okay, we've got this brutal true crime saga from the Renaissance. Incest, murder, corruption. Who on earth looks at that and thinks, you know what? This would make a great 5-act tragedy written in verse? Well, that would be Percy Bysshe Shelley. This guy was a born rebel. He came from a wealthy family, but he got kicked out of college for publishing a pamphlet on atheism, eloped with Mary Godwin, who, would go on to write Frankenstein, and he basically built his whole life around rejecting tyranny in every form. So, of course, when he moved to Italy in 1818 and stumbled upon this manuscript, the story just completely grabbed him. Now, for a poet who was famous for his, soaring, idealistic epics about myths and gods, taking on this dark, factual story was a really huge and very deliberate change of pace. And what's so interesting is how Shelley himself talked about it. He said his other works were like dreams of what ought to be, these beautiful ideas about justice and love. But the Cenci, that was different. He called it a sad reality, a totally unflinching look at that which has been. See, he wasn't just trying to retell a grisly crime story. He truly believed that by putting this real horror on the page, by giving a voice to both the victims and the monster, he could shine a light into the absolute darkest corners of the human soul in a way that no made-up story ever could. And believe me, Shelley did not hold back, not at all. He throws the audience right into the villain's head, giving a terrifying voice to the monster at the heart of this story. This is Count Cenci speaking in the very first act. He's basically admitting that, yeah, sure, other people might get a kick out of revenge, but for him, causing pain is the only thing that brings him joy. He recognizes that other people can be cruel, but he sees his own evil as something pure, something special. For Cenci, evil isn't a way to get something else. The evil is the point. Shelley creates this character who is completely self-aware. He finds his own unique pleasure, his own sense of self, in the total suffering of other people. It's literally what makes him feel alive. And if you want to see just how monstrous he is, look no further than one of the play's most notorious scenes. So, Count Cenci gets news that 2 of his own sons, who he'd sent away hoping they'd die, have been violently killed. And what does he do? He throws a party, a huge feast. He calls it a most desired event, a literal answer to his prayers. So the complete opposite of all that pure evil is his daughter, Beatrice. Shelley, like pretty much everyone in Rome, was just captivated by a portrait of her, one that was supposedly painted while she was in prison, waiting to be executed. And in her face, he saw this perfect, tragic mix of strength and vulnerability. He wrote down every detail of what he saw in that painting. A calm exterior that was just masking this unimaginable pain. Her eyes, he said, were swollen with weeping, but at the same time, beautifully tender and serene. To Shelley, she was the absolute embodiment of a noble person forced by horrific circumstances to do a monstrous thing. She was innocent and guilty all at once, and that contradiction was the very heart of the tragedy for him. So Shelley writes this incredibly powerful, psychologically deep play based on a horrifying true story. What does the world do with it? Well, for the most part, they hit it.
For almost 100 years, the subject matter, we're talking incest and killing your own father, was considered way too shocking for a public performance. But here's the thing. Even while it was banned from the stage, critics knew it was a work of genius. They were calling it maybe the greatest English drama since Shakespeare.
And that right there, that's the power of what Shelley did. By refusing to look away from the sad reality, he created something timeless that forces all of us to ask a really uncomfortable question. When the system fails you, when your protector is actually your tormentor, what do? That's the question Beatrice had to answer, and it's a question that still haunts us today.